Hi, everybody. It's Nancy Reyes with For Your Canine.
And Joanne Soike with Fur Better, Fur Worse.
And Lisa Bataska with Canine Defined.
Tonight, we're going to be chatting about dog sports, what they are. So, for those of you who aren't doing sports or thinking about it or want to know more about it, this is going to be the your opportunity to ask questions and kind of uh, get more ideas about what different sports are. We'll try to cover as many as possible because now there's a whole bunch of them. Where before we were pretty limited to what we were able to do. So these days there's so many different ones to participate in, so it's basically, see what you like and what your dog's aptitude is. We'll also tell you kind of what you need to be before you even think about starting those sports, right? Because it certain things are required um, as far as physical situation and behavioral before you can before you should start these sports. Not that everybody adheres to that, but before you decide you want to go in and do that. So let us know you're there, and if you have a question about any sports, please let us know. Um, if you have any burning questions on different sports or whatever, or don't know what they are, we'll try to elaborate a little bit more on that. So, hi, Sue. Okay, so first we'll start with we'll try to go in alpha order, but in alphabetical order. So, the first dog sport that comes to mind is agility. For those of you who, I mean, everybody pretty much knows what agility is. It's basically dogs go through obstacles in a timed way, and they get to compete in that. So this goes back to one of the requirements that you should consider before you start agility is your dog's physical structure and physical health. Number one, your dog should be able to handle the physical demands that are going to be put on the dog um, before you try to do it. And also, there's some behavioral things that dogs that are easily aroused or over aroused, agility might be tough. Not that they couldn't do it, but it'd be initially a pretty tough setup, right? Um, and you can start agility pretty early. A puppy, they can't jump, and they can't shouldn't do too many weave pulls, and the equipment should be lower. If you have a young dog and they have full height equipment, you might want to have a chat with your instructor about that, right? What are some of the other things you guys think that you need for agility to be able to do agility, right?
Good relationship. I mean, first and foremost, a dog who's wanting to interact with you and is able to ignore distractions. I think that's first and foremost, quite honestly, for any sport.
Sure.
But agility included too, because and then the physical thing, because you see so many people wanting to do a lot of high equipment, and I'm like, if your dog falls, you're going to suffer a pretty bad injury, especially if I mean. So those are some of the things that I'm careful with when I've taught agility. I just want a good foundation, because once you get a good foundation, once you have a good relationship, your dog's physically able to do it. And I'm not a super pusher on stuff. Like I don't want my dogs to be injured, because I've done it with all my dogs, and I've realized the things that I've done in the past weren't appropriate and how to change it now moving forward. So, like today, I spent a lot of time playing with my dogs doing fitness stuff, working on some basic stuff. And that's been kind of a priority for me to try and get my dogs into a better health, uh, physical health, so that we can do things safely and careful as possible to make sure that they're, not going to injure themselves. So,
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, I will go back to the behavioral piece of it. Like, I did it for many, many, many years. And now I look at it and, some of the dogs I have, I wish they wouldn't, I wish they would make the criteria a little bit older to compete. And I know everyone will kill me that does agility, but, you know, the reason why is you might have a dog who is an old soul, right? Who is calm and collected and doing a wonderful job with all the distraction things through adolescence. But let's be fair, that is not the case, right? most dogs that I have seen anyway, unless someone's like a pusher or you have that magic unicorn puppy, most people don't really start seeing success until 2 years old, or more than that, and that's because their brains start to mature. So I think agility is just such a fast-paced. You have to pay attention. You have to ignore distractions. You have to be safe and know where your body is. You have to do all of these things at once. And so when you have those high arousal dogs, I I feel like when you start that stuff earlier on, they're practicing living in that high arousal state, and it doesn't help you. But and again, don't kick me, agility people. But a lot of this goes for a lot of sports, right? Nobody really wants to work on the behavioral piece of it. I want to work on the equipment. I want to work on the turns. I want to work on the come to sides. I want to work on all the things that are going to matter on course. But if you really step back, controlling arousal and keeping your dog in a good headspace means more than anything else, because that's how you can call them off of something if you make a mistake. That's how they can not knock bars, and most of the knock bars I see in the lower level classes have nothing to do with dogs that jump poorly. It has to do with over arousal. Just saying.
Yeah. Well, and I am going back to doing agility again with my now 6.5-month-old puppy, but we are still on wobble boards and physical conditioning and basic staying with me and basic relationship stuff. I am not in a hurry to compete with him because he's still a baby, and I'm not going to do anything to, I want to play the sport, don't get me wrong, but I'm not going to try to move at a pace that's not appropriate for us because I know he's young. That's going to cause any injury. I mean, it's why bother if you're going to injure your dog to do it? So we're doing pretty slow, easy stuff. Lots of foundation, lots of groundwork, lots of staying with me, all that stuff. Until, and at some point down the road, and like I said, and Joanne's right, you probably should, I wouldn't be looking to do any kind of competing or anything till he's at least 2 or 2.5 years old, where he's more mature and all that stuff. There's no way I would try to do anything sooner, because why would I? We want to play longer, not faster. And again, and it also depends, you guys, it also really depends on your goals too, right? What are your goals for you and for your dog? It's something I always like to ask, right? And there's no right or wrong answer. Whatever your goals are, if you want to have a world team dog, then you need to get the right dog. And it's a different path, right? Or if you just want, like me, I just want to be able to play and maybe get a couple titles along the way, and that's good enough for me. Or we've also had people who really enjoy training it. They come to classes every week. They love it, and that's all they want to do. They want to come to class and enjoy it. So, there's not a right or wrong answer here. You can, agility is good fun. It's good for their physical conditioning and all that, and it keeps them in good shape, keeps them mentally stimulated. We've had clients that have done agility in class for 10 years, and they're never competed. They just had a really nice time with their dogs and just have that date night, you will, with your dog every week, and they'd come to class, and it's been and so that's what I mean. It's like there's competition for all sports, but doing the sport doesn't mean that you have to compete in it. That's not really that's not what we're saying. But if you want to, it's there, right? It's a different feel. But if you just want to go and work your dogs and come to class every week and have a great time, awesome. So you always want to go into sports with kind of a goal or an idea of what you want to achieve there. Again, not that you have to, do all that. So, and most dogs can do agility. So I know some of the agility folks give me. I have a very large shepherd, Tango. I don't think agility was going to be a sport for that dog. He's enormous. He's too big, and the abuse and the beating that his body was going to take doing agility was just not something I was willing to do. So obviously, we never did it. And I know some people, they want to have the first whatever breed dog and agility, but I I want him, I want him to be with me longer and healthy longer. So, and agility does add time to your dog's life. I know my dogs are very long lived, and I attribute it to a lot of dog sports and physical stuff that we do. So I feel very strongly about that. But again, I'm not gonna the sport like I wouldn't put Tango asking him to jump 24 inches over and over on that body was just probably not a wise choice, right?
I think you're right. I mean, I think too, you have to consider why you're doing it. And some people will do it for just something fun to do. And I'm all for that. But then you keep equipment low if it's fun because you don't want your dogs to get injured. Because I don't know about you, but I find a lot of dogs that are overweight or not physically fit enough to
Oh yeah. Yeah.
that particular sport. It's kind of like, and even flyball would be another one, which we'll probably talk about. But there are certain sports that are just more physically demanding than others. I mean, like I told some people, I'm like, there's plenty of sports to play, and I used to be a gymnast and do back bends and splits. Ask me if I can do that now. No, because I'm not physically capable of doing it. And I'm not as flexible as I once was. So, I mean, there are things that we do. And then, and I've learned from my past has been that, I got bitten by the agility bug and I'm like, oh, I want to play. I love it, blah, blah, blah. And I'd run my dogs hard on it. And then as they aged, there were certain things that would pop up. And I'm like, like one of my dogs, he had wrist issues. And I attributed that from probably doing a little too many A-frames, right? I mean, there was probably other structural issues going on, but those are considerations, right? I mean, for me, it's about longevity. And if my dogs love playing whatever game they want to play, that's important to them, I'll play that game, even if I don't care for it. Because there are certain games that, my dogs are like, I love this game. I'm like, ugh, like Lacey for Obedience, loved it, and I'm like, okay. But anyway, I digress. But I think the other important piece of it too is that I think people underestimate the amount of work it requires from a body person handling point.
Yeah, honey.
And I think like everybody thinks, oh, they just run and do it. No, there's a lot more to it, and there's a lot more skill set. So you really do have to like training in order to, in my opinion, play agility safely and appropriately and with clear communication. Because I think a lot of times too, the dogs, they get frustrated and they get over aroused and then start reacting that way, right? And they have a hard time with it. So, and that's when people are like, what's going on? What, it's basically you guys working as a team. That's totally different.
Yeah. And then also it, takes, you got to put in the work. It is one of those sports you're going to have to really work at it to get real good at it. Okay. And again, you should start with low equipment, getting him used to movements and the noise of it, and all that, and try it. Like we now, I don't know if Joanne doesn't offer agility, but at my facility we do a pre-agility class. It kind of goes over the real basic things and it teaches them some basic stuff. So then it helps with to see if your dog even likes it, and or it's even something you want to do. So it gives you an opportunity to try before you buy, so kind of thing, right? All right. Next is barn hunt. What barn hunt is, for those of you who don't know, is it's a ring, usually 25 by 25, maybe a little bit bigger. It has hay bales. We have live rats that we train to go in a tube. We do train the rats to go in a tube. And then the dog searches for the rats in the, in that ring and the with the hay bales and all that stuff. I'm not sure if some of you have seen it. It's a form of scent work, but it also relies some on natural instinct. Dogs that tend to be naturally predatory towards little rodents obviously do it goes quicker for them. Goes quicker for them, right? They're able to I don't know, take to it more quickly than a dog that doesn't have a lot of prey drive, right? Again, they can still be as equally successful, but it's just simpler when you have a dog that's naturally prey driven. Don't you think, Joanne?
She's like,
I'm gonna kill some dogs.
They're like, we're
I'm
not.
sorry. I was gone all day, and these two are wrestling. This one's growling. I'm like mute and putting them away. He keeps opening the gate after I put him outside of the gate, so that's why I keep leaving. And magically, he's right here again. Sorry. What was the question?
About barn hunt, prey drive.
Yeah. Although I will tell you, Little Miss Red Dog has
Well, does
tons
have
and
a lot.
tons of prey drive.
Yeah.
And I tried it with her, and the funniest part was when you're teasing with the tube, she's like, I want to kill that. And then once it stopped moving, she was like, oh, that's dumb. She found the tube and she was like, that's stupid. And then she never went looking for it again. So
yeah, no, it's true. Some of them that have that natural prey drive, they're like, well, I'll never get the rat. So and so just for those of you, I did struggle with barn hunt because of the rat. I would never sacrifice the life of one animal for the enjoyment of another. So our rats live very, very, very well, and we train them to go in the tube. And they also get the freedom of choice. We present the tube. If they want to get in there and work, they do. And if they don't go in. And that's kind of how we do it, just because they have to have some choice in the matter as well. I feel the rats do. And so, yeah, our rats are very, very well kept, and they live better than some dogs in many cases. But I know that's so we want to make sure that they have some that they're okay with it, and they get to visit. We also make sure that we acclimate them very, very well to the dogs, meaning dogs come in and visit them, and they're that are going to be good with them, obviously, and so they get used to the dog's breathing, sniffing, and all that. And that really makes a difference, because now when dogs go in there, the rats come to the dogs to check them out, which is really important for us, so that the rats are absolutely comfortable with the dogs being near, sniffing, because that's what they're going to hear mostly in the tube. So once they get used to knowing what that is, it makes life easier.
I think for barn hunt, what I like about it is the fact that the handler is very aware of what's required, but then they have a hard time with if the dog is natural finding the rat, but they don't want to tunnel, for example, then they realize how little control they do have. And then it focuses on that training. I think it's really interesting. My dogs have always enjoyed it anytime I've played with them, my older dogs. But it's a really fun sport to do. And I think that the dogs enjoy it. And there are some dogs that are like, okay, so what? I can see my border collie doing the same thing as Joanne said with Fire, kind of like you can move it around, but then, okay, it's not as fun, because he's more, as the border collies. I mean, the border collies are kind of the dog for agility, right?
Yeah.
But the border collies are super visual. And so movement is a bigger issue for them, like more drawing. So, like you talked about, the predatory sequence based upon the breed is also a very important factor. But how much training you put into anything is relative as well.
Right. And that seems, and it's pretty confined. It's a small space. It's a small area that they're working in, smallish, right? 25 by 30.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things with any kind of scent work, barn hunt or nose work or the like, or tracking or whatever, it's the dog's game, right? The dogs are the ones that are in charge. They have the nose, they have they know where everything is. So it's a more independent for the dog. So it's a lot more confidence building, where agility, it really is a team sport. You're working together to get to the course. In scent work, barn hunt, and the others, the dog is truly in charge of telling you about it, finding it, and all that kind of stuff. So I think people who've done a lot of obedience, or that have more controlling kind of a situation, they tend to have a more difficult time with the scent work type of sports. And for barn hunt, honestly, they don't need a super amount of, they should know their name, and they should be able to have a decent recall before they start, but they don't need as much as much obedience or basic information as as agility, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
It can be a little,
I think it's cool to watch dogs that at first they're like, what? But you can totally tell the difference when you get a handler team, handler and dog team in there, and you could see the handler kind of micromanaging stuff like, go look here, and the dog's like, what do I do next? And those take a little bit, right? But I think it's also a really good confidence booster, as most scent games are, for
Yep.
sure.
Yeah, and that's one of the things scent games do for dogs is build confidence because they have to work independently and it's a confidence builder. The sport is all scent sports really help with that quite a lot. So barn hunt again. One of the challenges there is finding if you're interested in competing, finding a trial, and also finding classes because classes are tough because they have to have all the bales and the space to be able to do it and all that stuff. So that might be a little more challenging to be able to find classes for barn hunt. But it's something to consider, right? It's really fun. It's really relatively simple. My beagle has actually taken to barn hunt pretty well actually. So at least I get to play with her doing that because she seems to really enjoy it. So. All right. And the cons of barn hunt? It's a little dirtier because you have hay and straw and all that stuff. But and I don't know. But going back to what Lisa said about their physical condition, you definitely want to have a dog that's in because they have to climb, they have to come down on stuff. So while it's not like agility that they're going up and down on stuff, they still have to do some of that. So you really want to have your dog in decent condition, right? All right. Next sport. Let's see. Agility, barn hunt, fly ball.
Ball. Yeah.
Fly ball. Fly ball is where you run down the ring, run down
It's like a relay race for dogs to get the ball.
to get the ball.
Time sport.
And so that's it's finding classes is hard because it's so noisy and competitions as well. But it's a pretty fun sport too, right? The dog runs down, so the dog has to love tennis balls or toys, and they have to be able to be good with other dogs, meaning they should be able to pass other dogs because they're passing dogs on either side. So that's kind of a prerequisite for fly ball. They have to be pretty comfortable passing other dogs in a highly aroused state, right?
I had a friend that when I was in Maryville, we did fly ball and stuff, and it was really fun. And I played with my one dog. And I think for some dogs who don't like lack of predictability, like this is a pretty good sport, provided they're also, tolerant with the sounds and willing to do stuff. Because it takes a while to break it down and really do a good job, and joining a team is a whole nother story, and then finding places to practice is a whole nother thing. But Fender, I stopped playing agility with him and started playing freestyle with him, and then we stopped because I found out his wrists were bad, and that was one of the results. But he loved just chasing because basically it's a exciting game of chase, right? And then getting the recalls are fantastic, and you have to have phenomenal recalls, especially when you have the distraction and the dogs passing, because at one point they're pretty close, like even at the start. So it's pretty cool. I mean, it is a loud sport. I have to say.
It is. It is. Actually, I'm gonna pull a quick video so you can see it because I haven't. Go ahead, Joanne.
I while she's pulling that up, I would just say if you don't have access to a behavior trainer or you don't want to go to a basic obedience, you want something specifically for recalls, find a fly ball team, right? Yes. And ask them if you can do a private with them, because those people spend 6 months on their recalls, and they do it fun, and the dogs would want to be nowhere else than chasing them and their toy.
Yep.
And once you see this, you'll see why you have to have that recall back to the handler.
And you see why they have to be really good about being near other dogs. See that? They're and when you're doing a relay, it's two. You have two and there's a turn that they have to learn. That's
Yeah.
the box, right? But you can see why it's really hard on the dog's wrist.
It is. It's hard on their front end too. I mean, our shoulders, remember, your shoulders are not on dogs are not attached to your, you know, your rib cage and everything. It's all held together by muscle. And I think this is why, like with agility and with fly ball and certain sports that require that high pressure impact on the front is critical to build that musculature so that it is stays in place a little more, because that's where a lot of injuries can occur.
Right. Yeah, so that's fly balling. Is like we don't see as much of it anymore in our area. It used to be big quite a few years ago, but now we don't see it, and it's hard to get on a team and all that stuff. And
Oh, so we have a huge team here. They go
yes,
to
you do. Yes, you do.
Yeah.
That's where Noel is this weekend.
Oh, okay. Well, and I was gonna say, for anyone watching, if you are interested in flyball, we did something with Jane McQuillan. You can probably, I don't think Lisa was with us then, but if you look on For Your Canine or For Better For Worse in the video section, you can find a whole hour of Facebook Live dedicated to flyball. And we talked about the turns and how to do them safely and recalls, all those things. So if you're interested in learning more, check that out.
Right. All right. So flyball. The next sport is lure coursing. Right? Lure coursing.
Well,
Freestyle.
Or fast cat and lure coursing, because
and freestyle.
yeah.
So fast cat and lure coursing, for your information, is basically a dog chases a lure. It's a big with the sight hounds.
Mhm.
And fast cat is just a straight line versus lure coursing is more, there's more turns and all that stuff in it. So yeah, so it's a pretty a lot of sight hounds obviously excel at it because they're chasing a bag or in some cases a piece of what do you call it, rabbit fur or something, but usually they use just bags or something to chase it. So any dog can play it, really, but it's really big obviously in the sight hound thing, and you have to have the equipment and you have to have
The space
to do it. Right?
Yeah. And so lure coursing in and of itself is only for sight hounds, right? If a coursing ability test. So if you're looking for them on a site, right? Lure coursing, you can't enter unless you have a sight hound. If you're looking for the cats, which is why they came up with fast cat. So coursing ability test is for non-sight hounds to be able to enter that. And so a fast cat is 100 yards straight away. And the coursing ability test or true lure coursing test can be up to, well, I think on average 700-800 yards. They have shorter ones for veterans or other reasons, but I mean, it's a long run. Sometimes they can be out there for a minute and a half chasing that with turns. And I think the biggest thing for me, any dogs that like to chase things love this sport. They love it, right? They love to chase it. It gets crazy. It gets really loud. They bark. They look like this, right? This is what I look like whenever I do it. But every time you go, you have to get inspected, and usually they just have you do a quick little trot around to make sure your dog's not limping or anything.
Mhm.
But the people who set these courses are there at 5 o'clock in the morning. They are walking that course to make sure there's no holes.
Yep.
So your dogs don't sprain an ankle, break a leg, anything like that. And I've seen people say, "Oh, let's just get one of those and hold a trial," which technically you can, but there is so much safety involved in this sport. So, be very, very careful where you're going and what you're doing with this. A dog can get very, very hurt.
Yes.
Yeah. But it's and it's also very seasonal, right? Especially depending on where you live.
Right.
You live in the Midwest or East Coast, you can only play during the summer. If you live in the West Coast, maybe in South, you can probably play it more year round because it's more available. But because you definitely have to be outside, and it's not something you can work on Not something you can work on uh, inside. All right, lure coursing. So that's, and then your dog definitely has to be very fit, and and there's a higher incidence of injury in that particular sport as well. And your dog should be fit, and they should be in pretty good condition to be able to do that. All right. Lure coursing. Oh, there's freestyle, which is again, it's pretty popular, but freestyle is basically um, stop dancing with your dogs is really what it is. But it's basically actually freestyle is actually pretty hard. I'm going to be honest, because
Crufts, just watch any of the Crufts videos. I'm like, they're amazing.
Yeah.
At what they do with their dogs. Mm-hmm. So it's basically a bunch of tricks, and then they put it together to music, right?
Yes.
So it's kind of a routine that way. It's really impressive, because if you realize the amount of time it takes to train some of those behaviors is a lot, and then to put it together in a sequence. Although once the dog learns the pattern, they're good.
Right. So here, I'll pull one up again, because freestyle is not something you hear tons about, but it is something that happens. So this is a cross run, and it's basically, it's a lot of like Lisa said, a lot of training, and it's a lot more and it seems to be pretty popular, the sport with men and women, which is pretty interesting. Mm-hmm. Granted, most dog sports are very female dominated, but there's some men that also do it. So it's pretty impressive, like that skill that dogs should have, and it doesn't have to be a border collie, I promise you. Mm-hmm. So
on my cell phone, I think what people also, we have to understand is they're working off of verbals. They're not like you cannot give any hand signals, type of stuff. It has to be off of verbal for the dogs to respond.
So that's freestyle for those of you who it's a lot of fun, but it is a lot of work. I'll give you that. That's pretty cool. Yeah, you really have to be dedicated and spend a lot of time to do that, right? It's a pretty intense sport for sure, but it's a big sport. It's pretty big in Europe, but it's here. There's some competitions too in our area as well, but not as often as you'd like to see. So that's freestyle. All right, after freestyle is
frisbee. Or disc, they call it.
Oh, disc. Oh, yeah, we skipped right over that.
I was like, well, frisbee disc.
Frisbee disc. So disc is another very physically, demanding on the dogs and on the human, I'm going to say.
Because, well, it depends what event you do, right?
Yeah, well.
There's like toss and fetch, but I've never been a good frisbee thrower. Yeah. That's why my dogs are like, we love this game, but you really suck. Thanks. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's a pretty physically demanding. Again, it's very similar to freestyle in that a lot of it relies on verbals. Granted, you have a lot of the cues. You can use some physical cues with the frisbee, right? So the dog really has to. It's a pretty physically demanding sport as well, right? So yeah, as you can see what I mean.
And there's certain criteria. And there's a certain criteria, like you have to do so many things with this. And then frisbee, this is freestyle, but there's also different events in playing disc. There's leagues and stuff where they do toss and fetch and how far you can go. And then they have frisgility where you do frisbee with agility. They have a bunch of different things. So it just depends like how much you want to. That's a lot of work. I'm not that physically fit. myself.
I know. Well, it is. It requires a lot of physical for the dog and the human too,
Right.
right? So again, your dog has to be again, and it could be pretty seasonal too, right? Um, pretty.
Well, yeah, because you do need some space, but there are places, depending on the venues, they'll have, like so we talk about each sport, and then within each sport, there's different venues or
Yes.
different places that you can play in. And if you know those venues, then you can aim your game towards that, so to speak. But there are places where you can do it indoors. You just need a pretty big space for that. So like a toss and fetch probably wouldn't be done outdoors, but they have other kinds of games, which are pretty fun. And then they have pop-up games like that too sometimes, so people can go and try and play. And yeah, it's pretty fun. And if your dog loves it, you just have to be careful with your throws. That how they land is super important. And yeah, that's always scary to me. I always hold my breath when they go up. I'm like, oh.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I mean, you guys, when you're thinking about dog sports or what you want to do and what you want to accomplish, right? The freestyle and agility and disc, you really have to have that connection with your dog and be and you are providing the cues and being able to do so that you can do the sport and they can follow your lead, right? So it's a little bit more intense in that way, for sure. So you again, you can't have a dog that's really overweight doing disc because it's gonna be expensive. And like Lisa said, all the dog sports have different venues, meaning organizations that have a criteria for games that you can compete in. And again, this is just if you want to compete. If you don't want to compete, you can just do classes and enjoy the time and play a game with your dog once a week also. Really, it's not necessary. You don't have to compete. We're just letting you know that what's available if you choose to, right? And so the other after that is nose work, right? Yep. So nose work is the newest of all, I would say, right? The newest of all the dog sports. It's only been around 12, 13 years, maybe 14 years. So it hasn't been around a long time. Oh, yay. Congratulations, Ronnie. Deb asked about disc. Yes, you can absolutely teach him to land correctly. Yep.
A lot of it has to do with your throw.
You have to first teach yourself how to throw.
What'd you say, Joy?
I said you have to first teach yourself how to throw.
No kidding.
Yeah, but that's how you teach him.
And any of that stuff where dogs are catching things, I think I see a lot of people get big air, right? I want my dog to jump real high and catch it. And what happens is if it's not constantly in front of them, right, then the dog arches its back and they come down, right, with a stretched back. It's all that impact goes right through hips and spine. It's terrible for them. And that's where you can see so many of those injuries. So if you watch really good Frisbee throwers, what happens is the Frisbee gets that go out. So the dog's chasing it. And it's usually never more than, freestyle is different, but just that true full on run and fetch. It's usually never more than 2 heights of the dog. Right. And that's they get extra points, I believe, if there's 2 feet off the ground or 4 feet off the ground. So you want your dog to jump and get it. But when you think about it, it's almost like that chasing the tug toy, right? You want them to come, boom, hit it, and then have that nice flat landing.
Right. Because we've had some dogs that, but they come down wrong. It gets pretty gnarly for sure.
Yeah.
And that's where your high arousal dogs, that's tricky on that sport for sure.
That's like Lisa doing a backflip now.
That's right. I won't be highly aroused though. Doing it, I'll be like.
So then scent work, nose work, like I said, it's the newest of all the dog sports. And going back, you guys, I wanted to kind of address it. Um, Dog sports have been around a long time, but back in the day, the first dog sport was really conformation, right? And that was really for the wealthy and that people who had money that they would do conformation. Um, then in the 70s, then we had 60s, 70s, we started with um, obedience, competitive obedience. And that competitive obedience was the only game in town for
Mhm.
until the 80s, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
80s is
long time.
when dog agility came about.
And
then
dog agility as we know it now is not the same as it was when it first came
No.
out at all.
Right, right. And so I think uh now we are so lucky because I was thinking about that today. We're so lucky we get to play so many different things with our dogs.
Mhm.
Because there's so many more sports to choose from, which is why I thought, well, it's kind of a good thing. There's something for everybody. You don't if you don't, you can find your thing and within the dog sport, life, right? So, scent work, yes, scent work is really it's the newest. It does a lot for the dog, builds a lot of confidence, a lot of independence. So it's really a lot of fun. We do a lot of it if you guys haven't figured that out. And we compete in it as well. Again, competition's fun, but nose work is more than that. It provides confidence for the dog, problem solving, a lot of mental stimulation. So while it's fun to compete, it does way more than that for your dog
Well,
outside of it.
if you're not a overhandler.
Well, yes,
I mean, I
Yes.
do want to bring that up, right? So if you're somebody who likes to search how you think you see the detection guys doing it, right? Which is present, look here, look here, look here. Did you find it? What is that? That's not where the confidence builds, right?
Oh,
It's not that they don't gain independence and confidence when we search that way. So, for shy, fearful dogs, right? Allowing them to kind of go at their own pace and solve a super simple problem, that is what gives them that confidence, right? You think kindergartners, right? Can you write an A? What words start with A? Like that's where we begin and we let them solve their own problems. And that's what, you take them through preschool, kindergarten, first grade, all the way through elementary. I mean, that's really how I view scent work a little bit.
right. And it's great this is where the handler is. It's still a teammate, but the
Mhm.
handler is the dog is more in the lead and in charge of. The other thing nose work and agility does too. I'd say all the dog sports, but nose work more. It really you get to really know the nuances of your dog,
Yep.
how they move, what affects them. Agility too. Like every time they move a certain way, or you notice if they're not moving quite right, or you notice if things are just a little off. You just notice those little things. So that's one of the things that dog sports does for our relationship with dogs, right? It brings us to get to know them better or spend that extra time with them that previously back in the day, a whole house dog just sat around, hung out. They didn't really do much. The people who now do dog sports, it's a different life for the dogs. They could do other things. They're more inclusive part of the family, and they gets a lot more mental stimulation from all the dog sports that are offered now. Right. Oh, I know what we forgot to talk about was dog diving.
Yep.
Well,
Antler
hang
shot,
on.
tribal, tracking, obedience.
Before you move off of scent work, only because it's part of it in the AKC, UKC venues, is handler discrimination is a part of that.
Yes.
And so it's just a different version of scenting where they find you. And I mean, there's been very low interest in it, but I love it. And my dog likes it a lot. So it's not that different, except for you just teaching them, right, to alert on you instead of the essential oils that we're using in something else. So the dogs search a little differently. They alert a little differently. I think it's fun. So if you've never tried it, maybe give it a try.
Right. The other thing, tracking also, I'm jumping ahead to tracking. tracking also is when we start our dogs, we start them on finding the human. And it's really, that's quite a lot of fun as well, right? They find their people, the people first, and then eventually they start looking for other people, which is kind of really cool when the dog finds your scent, because that's a scent they spend a lot of time with, right?
Mhm.
Um, oh yeah, the hunt test. Yes, that's right. I forgot about field
Oh
training.
yeah.
Oh yeah, oh, those of us with sporting dogs. Um, yeah, so scent work is, and scent work is, and this is what I mean. The field trials for the pointing breeds have been around a very very long time, and Nan, don't be mad at me, but it is unfortunately still very old school training in that sport, which is why probably it hasn't gone very mainstream quite yet, right? I wish it would, because I have labs now that I would love to do hunt tests with, but I'm just a little concerned about finding a trainer that's not going to, use not so positive methods. I've been to field trials where they do it for the pointing, which is much gentler. So, um,
Um, I want to say something to Tony's comment because I think it's a nice comment. Just let your dog be a dog, meaning sit home all day. People don't get it. She said she has friends who's just said, let your dog be a dog. And to me, you're like, I am letting my dog, I'm giving my dog their best life. I'm letting them do all the things that they were bred to do. Right. I mean, like, I know Tony has golden retrievers, right? I'm letting my dog chase balls and sniff things. And like, what does your dog do in the backyard that's different than what I do?
right.
If you do it right. You know what I mean? So it's like I am letting them be a dog. They're being their best dog self.
Yeah, and I'm gonna say the field trials and the tracking and the scent work, it allows their dogs to do what's natural for them. So there's nothing more wonderful to see a dog out in the field doing what they're bred to do. There's nothing better than seeing a dog doing tracking and sniffing, that what they're bred to do. Agility and some of the other sports are sports that we've come up with that we invite them to. Scent work type of sports, we're invited into their world, so it's a little bit of a different spin on it, right? Um, it's a different spin on it. So or a dog doing, sheep herding is the other sport. Watching a herding dog herd sheep is a thing of beauty. It's amazing to see them do what they're naturally bred to do. So that's what I mean. We get to give them the opportunity to do what they were supposed to be. Dog be a dog. You could see a dog herd. It's just the coolest thing to see that, right? They're able to
And also remember, with these instinct type of behaviors that are geared towards, say, sporting breeds or herding breeds or whatever, you know what I mean, or lure coursing, they're specifically designed and geared towards certain breeds. You know what I'm saying? Because, like, can you get other dogs to herd? Sure. But when you have that natural instinct to do certain things, that's something of beauty that we cannot touch. But when we give them the opportunity and watch it, it's quite amazing, to realize what they're actually capable of doing, for sure.
Also here, like, this is the coolest thing when you see a dog that's actually, herding sheep. It's like, that's natural. And that's why when you see the border collies with the eye and all that, that's what they're supposed to do, right? That's a natural behavior for them.
Move, stupid.
I can't. I'm just got born.
Maybe I don't know what to do.
Still working on it. Sorry.
Yeah, but the mama came to get it. And,
Yeah. But yeah, like, I got my very first Vizsla, and the breeder was like, "Oh, you need to come to hunt test." I'm like, "I don't know what I'm doing," and she said, "It doesn't matter. Junior hunts are just instinct only anyway." And I went, and I was like, "Whatever. Like, I guess I have to do this, And oh my God, sitting out. I didn't do a lick of work, man. That dog went into that field and she hit a bird and she pointed that thing so hard. And I was like, ugh, all right, well, I guess I have to go to more of these because she loved it so much. Like it wasn't my thing, but my dog was like, we need to do this. I was like, okay. And I would really want to do agility, and she did, and she was never super great at that. So I really should have scrapped agility and spent more time there because that's, I mean, natural born hunter is what she was. So
Right. No, and it's really cool to see dogs doing what they're naturally bred to do, right? They're naturally, it's something that you don't really have to teach. It's what we taught them to do and what we've taught them to work, right? And so our dogs live border collies especially, they lived a very they live a very interesting. So here's an interesting I think this is so cool. You have a Great Pyrenees that's a guardian, a stock guardian, and then you have the border collies working the sheep.
Very cool.
So that you see that the border collies working the sheep, but you see the Great Pyrenees, trying to protect it. So I think that's pretty awesome to see.
Well, and I just keep going back to kind of to Tony's comment that she's talking about, her friends don't get it. When you watch this, imagine that that's the group of kids in the backyard. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, this dog is hardwired to do what it's doing. Right? And so I know all three of us, we get calls like this all the time. Like, I can't get my border collie to stop nipping my kids when they're running in the yard. It's like, if the dog had this outlet to go let all that loose where it's supposed to be, can you imagine how quickly that would fix the kids in the backyard? Like, I don't do that there. And we're going to go get sheep later,
But I will bring up another one, which never really took off, is Tri-Ball.
Yeah.
I love that sport, but again, I kind of am drawn towards the sports that require a lot of training, that take time to see an end result, if that makes sense. I'm not saying the other sports are not, like, the instant gratification sports aren't better or worse. They're just different. But I do like the training aspect of it. And Tri-Ball is basically herding balls. So the difference is that you're looking at the dog versus looking at the sheep to determine where the dog is at to identify what has to happen next, and of course we think we know better than the actual dog in herding. So we jump in to add our complex portion to it. But Tri-Ball I always loved it. I thought it was very cool. They go out, as you can see, and then they have to push a ball in between the two cones, and the person has to stay between the two cones as the ball comes in, and they get points and stuff like that for it. And then they have smaller balls for smaller dogs, etc. And it's a pretty cool sport, something that you don't need tons of equipment to do, because I think also consideration for things like that too, but you do have to train various skills, like getting the ball out of corner and so forth, and pushing it towards the person without biting it.
Yeah.
Remember, Luke?
Yeah, we went through quite a few of those balls.
It was so naughty.
You're right. And that sport never really took off.
Because, I think it's a really hard sport. I think when the sports are really challenging for people, that's when you can tell the difference between training, who likes to work the dog or train them specific behaviors. And you know what I mean? Because you really have to be into that, truly.
Right.
So
because to do the sheep herding, because it is a very big time commitment, and
time and travel, and finding places with various sheep to help your skills.
Yes.
Well,
and it's dirty. I don't like it.
Yeah, that's the thing to me. Things about field work and sheep herding, and I feel too like there's a ton of work to be put into it, but it's also like, who's going to drive an hour to go? You know what I mean? Like, you might go to an hour to a nose work class, but like, I don't know. It seems different. Like, nobody wants to bundle up in the winter and go out and herd sheep or, set birds out, those types of things. Right. So the work becomes that much harder for the human, instead of just going to class and visiting with your friends and having a good time. And, and let's be fair. I am the older I get, the more fair weather sporting person I am becoming. I don't like to be cold. I don't like to sit out there and have icicles on my nose, you know? So and that's okay too. If I really had a dog that loved it, I probably would. If I had Fire when she was younger, I probably would have spent more time herding because she does enjoy it. But
I will periodically go out, and very rarely, because of course I'm not a mud, cold weather person, but I've gone out before and taken dogs just to see, like, hey, let's see something different. More of as an enrichment versus, oh, I expect you to do it, right?
sure.
But it is really cool to see it when it turns on. You're like, huh, look at that. It's kind of cool. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and then next is
you said duck diving, but we didn't talk about
objective and obedience. Let's
it.
talk about that real quick. Obedience is this is at Cross, so this is pretty hardcore right here.
Mhm.
Hold on one second. Let me pull it.
Everything European seems a lot more
Yeah.
wow. Like, wow.
Americans don't want to work that hard.
Hey. Yeah, but yeah. But their obedience seems very similar to me, like the IGP or,
Yes.
you know what I mean? Stuff like
It is.
that, which I think is crazy, crazy interesting.
Right.
I mean, I like obedient. I only did it because my one dog loved it, and because she loved it so much, I started liking it.
So
Well,
if
like-
you don't know what she's talking about, she means the protection work. So if you think about IPO, Schutzen type of stuff, that's what she's saying it's similar to.
With their healing style, right?
Yes. Yes.
So that's
And the verbals, like depending on the level that they're all on verbal. There's no, like, they don't do many hand signals, or you're not allowed to in certain aspects of this.
yeah, this is pretty hard in America. Our American competition is not this.
No.
It's
Nope. In other countries, isn't it in Japan? They have to take a test. Their dog has to take a test and pass some tests before they can actually compete in
Yeah.
agility. And then Germany, I mean, they all have different requirements.
right.
You know, it's so crazy interesting to me.
So
Yeah. This is pretty
Intense.
yeah.
I just had a conversation at a trial today, as a matter of fact, and I was joking, and I said, "Oh yeah, you know, I've dabbled in obedience with a couple of dogs," and I said, "We're the 170, 172 kind of folks. Now 200 is the top in obedience, and 170 is like the last passing score you can get before you fail." So I'm like, I'm a 170, 172 kind of gal, and she just kind of like shook her head at me, and I was like, "Hey, listen, right? You get out of that sport what you put into it."
Yeah.
100%. And that's about how much I put into it, how much effort I put into it. So I'm gonna expect more than that. And she sort of came back and she said, you know, fine, you're joking. She goes, but it's really true. She said,
Yeah.
you know, the more precision and drills and that sort of stuff to get things perfect. Those people that want those 200s, they're working all the time, all the time, trying to get that, right? You know, it's just hard. There's a couple of sports out there. Actually, I lied. Every single sport out there I have seen it in. I'm not going to knock obedience. It's just the first one I saw it in. But every single sport out there, I have seen some really terrible things for $1.99 ribbon.
Yep.
Right. And I have taken on and I have been advocating for sort of the New York motto, if you see something, say something, right? Like any sport, I don't care what it is. I heard from somebody that was at a trial this weekend that they really had to get on a competitor for a dog was pulling and they yanked the dog really hard. Stop that. Don't do that, right? There's no need for that. And so I think, you know, I hate to be Debbie Downer, but it's like, until we all step up and make things better for competitors too, right? Like, because I've seen two competitors not being nice to each other either. And it's sort of like, hey, calm down. Like, what is that serious that we're fighting? And
yeah, this is supposed to be a fun sport we all do with our dogs that have a good time. Now, the more intense, and I want to show you the Schutzen or IPO. This is what this is.
crazy awesome, but wow.
It's a lot of work.
Yep.
Uh,
It is.
and not that, I mean, if you'd have to, you have to work pretty. So your dog, again, this is another sport that fitness is key.
Oh yeah.
Fitness is absolutely key. And so what he's doing is checking all the blinds for the bad guy. And this is, again, this is a sport. They have titles and all that cool stuff. And this is where, so you imagine the dog.
It's a football field, isn't it?
Yep. And the drive the dog has to have, and the impulse control, because the dog can bark, but he cannot grab that person until, until they're told. So that
I don't think I'd ever be a decoy.
and so you found the guy, and they have to wait for the handler to get there, right? And it's and then again, requires an incredible amount of impulse control. So that again requires an incredible amount of training and control for this particular sport.
And in the bite sports, there are multiple not sub sports, but various variations on it,
Right.
like French ring, and you know what I mean? So there's various pieces of it. I don't know all of it, but I just am impressed with I'm always impressed with the obedience part. I'm like, okay, the dog biting, that's great, but
Well, and you have to think about that, right? Everybody thinks the bite part's cool. Don't teach that.
mm-mm.
So you have impeccable obedience.
Yes.
I debated doing this with Bam, because you give him something to bite and stuff like that, he loves it, but he has not have that self-control. I don't think he ever will. So had I taught that dog to bite as a youngster, dear God, I would have had to pick up more insurance.
So that's that sport. It's something I know we get to see a lot of those kind of off the cuff, because they're not so common. I mean, there's a big group of people who follow it and do it, but there's not as, that's not the mainstream in the dog world, right? Because you have to have a certain type of dog. It's a lot of shepherds and Malinois and whatnot, and also those dogs are pretty intense and high drive and a lot of energy. So you have to also be able to live with that. So, and the people who do that sport, they know that's part of the package, and that's part of the package, and so they know that that's that's part of what
You
happens.
sign up for.
Yep.
You had talked about obedience, and then the other one is, I don't know if you were getting to it. Well, we said duck diving and rally, mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and then shed stuff, but that's another scenting sport.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So hold on, let me pull up the duck diving. Obviously, your dog should probably like water, because if it doesn't, but again, it's another
very loud sport.
Yeah.
Yes, very loud sport, and it's one of those things that you here, I'll pull that up. Your dog should be able to jump, and that's what you should be able to
And the way that they jump is important too, right? So they have to be physically fit. And I think that was an air retrieve, wasn't it? Or yeah. So they have different, how do you call that? Different events within the sporting
correct
competition.
Yes.
So there's vertical, there's, long jump.
But I'll be honest,
it's swim back or something.
Yeah, they've got to really be able to manage, be able to physically handle that particular sport, because again, taking off and all that is difficult too. There's rally obedience, as we talked about, that you have a course that you follow, which is a little more friendlier. You can talk to your dog all you want, and all that, which is kind of cool. Again, that's common as well. Let's see. Yeah, here we go.
I think the thing that concerns me most about duck diving is you have to teach them how to properly jump.
Yep.
And the other thing is, like, depending if you're doing the extreme vertical, you're going to get a really hyperextension
Yeah.
of that back.
Yep. Right.
So there's certain things you have to weigh your risk and what's important to you.
Right. And that's what I mean. You have to really think about what's what you want. So this is quick little rally demo.
So there's signs she's having to follow whatever they say.
Yeah. And you can talk to your dog all you want, which is different from regular obedience, right? So, and there's different levels and different venues for this as well. So you can, and again, there's different, governing bodies for these different dog sports. So it's a matter of which one you want to work on or which one you want to compete in, right? And so the other one that I personally love a lot and don't have a lot of time to do is tracking. It's one of, it's kind of what we I started doing, right? And so, and then Nosework came along, and it hasn't been the same since.
I love tracking. I think it's so cool the way that we learned with the different instructors. Like, there's so many different ways to teach it, and it depends what tracking you're doing. If it's AKC tracking versus, is it the IPO or whoever else in the bike does that,
Right.
because they're all different in the way that they teach them and what they look for. But just to watch a dog naturally track something is really cool.
Yeah.
And I really love the versatile surface tracking, where we went across, it was with John Rice when we were in a, what's it called?
Park.
Forest Preserve.
Yes.
Forest Preserve, that thing that we don't have here. But, and then watching the dogs track a person across a blacktop or a parking lot back onto the grass was really cool stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So this is a little, a VST tracking, which is the vertical surface. That's done through the AKC mostly. So this is in a parking lot, right, where the dog is going to following a track that was laid. Right, this was also clearly a different style of tracking, but you can see where they're going through a parking lot, then they're going through the grass and so on. And then the lower level is just through grass because the scent is much more challenging. So this is one of my other loves. I used to do a lot of tracking before. I really enjoy it very much. But now I don't have as much time to do it. So it's a little bit more.
Hi, Scott.
So anyway, those are just a few sports, and basically we want you to, whatever sport you choose, just know that you need to kind of see what's required, what's important to you, what kind of game you want to play with your dog, and also do it as safely as possible. There's something for everyone nowadays. You could do anything with your dogs, and whatever you choose to do is great, and because it enhances and enriches a dog's life a great deal, as well as your own. Because I'm gonna be honest, it really, I've never been a big competitor, but my dogs have actually gotten me to do that more and be better with it over time. I still get nervous and all that, but not like before. Now it's just a game we play, and it's just to have a different outlook. So that I have grown in that regard as a person. I'm not as stressed out and worried about what other people think and what we're doing. I'm just having a day with my dog, and we're playing a game with my dog. And so it just changes kind of, dogs make us better too. And doing the dog sports does enhance our life and our relationship with the dog. It's just like Joanne said, when people get too serious about it, it takes away from their life, right? Because they didn't sign up for these dog sports. We are wanting for them to do it with us, right? So we have to make it good for them, and that has to be top of mind always. Like you said, like Joanne said, people get crazy about the ribbons, and that's when we forget about the what's really important, right?
Mhm.
So that's why whatever you're considering, whatever sport you're considering, consider what you're asking your dog to do physically and mentally, and make sure that it's good for both of you, right? Not just for what you want to do. And also, yeah, Ronnie, that's the other thing. We also then belong to a great community of dog people that love dogs and the same, and those communities are like families too. Sometimes there's fighting, but mostly, but mostly, but mostly it's a fun sport or fun time we get to enjoy with our animals. So anyway, anything guys, ladies want to add? I know there's probably a ton more sports, but
I think the ones I like when I like the obedience, I'm personally into the ones where you can reinforce your dogs in the ring
Mm.
in some
Yeah.
fashion. To me, I find those more enjoyable. People call it what they will, but to me, I think those are the immediate feedback for the dog. I think is important. And especially for our younger dogs. And then if you wanted to go anything crazy, you can try something harder. But I really like those venues for sure. Like CDSP, I know we don't have any. But I love that
yeah,
for
that was
obedience. Such a cool sport, such a cool venue because you can reinforce in between exercises on obedience.
right.
Loved it.
CWAGS does on stationary exercises.
Yep, CWAGs. Yep, for rally, right?
And I think Cynosport Rally, you can too, right? At
I
stationary
think-
exercises.
Isn't
Yes.
it?
Yes, and
Yes.
you can yes.
Isn't it though in the lower level sports? Lower levels like novice or
Yeah,
level
maybe
one.
that's Cynosports. I think CWAGS
Yeah.
is all the way through. So
Yeah, CWAGs is all the way through, but I thought Sinus Sports you couldn't do it at a certain level. I don't know, but it's been a while since I played in that.
Well, and this is I will say this. This is one of those things that I think is cool because Lisa mentioned it earlier, right? There's different venues for sports. So there's like we all do a lot of us, right? We do scent sports. So there's AKC, there's UKC, there's CPE, there's CWAGs, there's all of these NACSW, there's all of these different venues. Which is such a gift because I know like for me, I started out in the AKCs, the UKCs where you could do one search at a time, right? And build the confidence of me and my dog as a team. Same thing before I put my dog into rally, right? I did Cynosport rally. I did CWAGs rally before we ever went into an AKC ring where you can't bring food in the ring with you. So it was a nice way to play the game as a build up to a harder version, right?
Yep.
So if you find a game you like, sometimes if you don't like that particular venue, there may be a different venue that allows you to come up a little slower.
Right.
So really quickly, I'm going to field training is the only one I haven't, which I would love to do, but I'm getting older and it's harder. And currently, the lab that loves to swim and all that, and retrieve my female, is got the hardest mouth in the universe. I don't know how that happened, but here we go. All right, so here is. And then you have to get up early. That's the other. No, kidding. That's the other problem. But so basically, this field training is what this is. They shoot the duck. The dog goes and gets it, and retrieve it and bring it to hand, which I would be a little bit worried about. And they have to also be steady with the gun, right? That they're going to be comfortable with shooting of the gun. And this dog was. And he grabbed the duck and brings it back. I'm sure there's more to it. And then for each sporting breed, there's different.
And
requirements.
that would be more true hunting. That as
Yes.
opposed to the sport, they'd never have the dog that close to the gun in AKC. They're close, but not that close. So
Yeah, that's
that was the poor dog is like, ugh.
Whoa.
Yeah.
But yeah, and like retriever trials, I'm going to tell you, retrievers are harder than pointers. Retrievers, they have to go out, they have to do water, they have to get
Yes.
retrieves. Pointing dogs, the first time out, they just have to point a dog or point a bird, not a dog. Point a
Yeah.
bird.
All right,
You
guys.
have to go out with another dog though, so you are on a brace. So they have to be good with dogs too. But
Yeah.
sorry. All right.
All right, guys. Well, thank you all. I hope this helped you guys. Hey,
No.
think about Tango. Come here. Think about what sports you might want to think about doing and learning more about, and do your research. Go visit classes, check it out, and see if you know what you like. Because your dog will probably be happy to do anything you're having fun too. So that's part of the being, having a relationship and doing stuff with your dogs.
Time for dinner.
Yes.
You're late. You're late.
Yes. All right. Good night. We are not having a Facebook Live next week. It's Easter, so we will see you the week after. Good night.
Happy Easter.
Bye.
Happy Easter.
Bye.